Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another edition of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. This is your host, Howard Fox. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration and enjoyment of the great outdoors. Our guest today is Rob Vinson. Rob is a wildlife refuge manager with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He is currently the wildlife refuge manager at the Pahranagat and Moapa Valley National Wildlife Refuge. Refuges, let me just state that paragraph one more time. 3, 2, 1. Rob is a wildlife refuge manager with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He is currently the wildlife refuge manager at the Pahranagat and Moapa Valley National Wildlife Refuges here in Southern Nevada. Rob, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Fantastic. And I have to share, I love the Pahranagat and Moapa Valley National Wildlife Refuges, which is probably why you're on this podcast, because I said, who can I talk to? And for our listeners, you're probably not going to see the background that I'm using on my Zoom screen, but actually in celebration of this episode with Rob, I have actually a dark sky photography photo that I took earlier, actually late last year. So Rob, again, welcome. And before we get into your work as a wildlife refuge manager, let's share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
All righty. That may be a long trail there.
Well, I'll keep you going. I'll keep you going.
All righty. Well, so I grew up in the foothills of Appalachian Mountains in North Alabama. And I always tell everybody that you're pre-programmed by the good Lord to do something. And I've always, I feel like I was pre-programmed to do what I'm doing, because ever since I was a little bitty guy, I've been outdoors. I mean, I grew up on a little cattle farm that we had there in North Alabama, and always loved wildlife, always loved birds. I don't know if any of the listeners know anything about North Alabama, but ducks wasn't something that you come by very regularly up there. And I mean, as far back as I can remember, I've always been fascinated with birds and ducks. So like for Christmas presents, when I was 6 years old, Santa Claus brought me my first decoys. My daddy, he didn't grow up duck hunting, and he started duck hunting just to take me because I was so fascinated with it. So I was 7 years old and started duck hunting on the Tennessee River. It just went from there. I mean, I was outside. I have a older brother, and we didn't have a whole lot in common, so had no neighbors. So I just did my own thing out in the woods. I was outside every day. And
wow.
Yeah, and it was just a different way to grow up. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of money, so I had to entertain myself, and had a couple of dogs that go with me, and that's what I did. And so I started playing a little bit of sports in school, and decided that was interfering with my hunting. So I had to get out of the sports and I didn't have my priorities straight there. So when I was in high school, I discovered, actually was hunting on a place. I was in Texas visiting my grandpa, and was hunting, and came in contact with a special agent. It's a Fish and Wildlife Service special agent, and he was undercover, pulled up in an old P-row, looked like he just crawled out of the swamp. We got to talking, and I don't even know if I was old enough to drive yet. And so we talked for a while, and I don't remember the conversation per se, but
sure.
He basically introduced me to the world of, hey, there's such thing as a wildlife biologist. So I figured that out and focused my whole energy in high school and college on that. Was my end goal, to be a wildlife biologist, as soon as I found out. So as soon as I graduated high school, I went straight from walking down and getting my diploma to about a week later, I was in college, and then went to Auburn University and got my degree in wildlife science.
All right, Rob, War Eagle.
So the rest is history. I've worked in every flyway, worked and lived in every flyway of the country now.
Okay.
So flyways are the administrative. There's 4 flyways in the Union, which is Atlantic, Mississippi, Central, and Pacific. So yeah, I mean, this is how I started out as a wildlife biologist. When I was a waterfowl technician in South Carolina, fresh out of college, went to Charleston. Actually lived in the suburbs of Charleston, and was working in the the low country in the Ace Basin. And from there, went into the Mississippi Delta, and I did a stretch in the plains in Nebraska. And then I moved out here just to get that Western experience.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
and then transitioning over from a biologist to a manager. So that's
Okay.
kind of how that whole transition took place. But yeah, it's been a long road, but been very focused. So my whole career's been in wetland management and waterfowl management, birds. So
Fantastic.
mhm.
Well, Rob, I want to share one thing with you, and I know you're probably saying, "This guy's where's his voice from? Is he from Alabama?" And I know you're not saying that. He's probably it sounds like he's from the Midwest, which is where I grew up. But I spent a year in Alabama, so I lived in Montgomery for a year.
Oh
Used to
yeah,
travel all around the state. I think far north I got was Muscle Shoals, Huntsville area.
yep. That's pretty close where I grew up.
Okay, so hey, we can say we've almost broken bread together, so that's good. And I knew War Eagle, so when I
That's
first
right.
moved down there, my manager, she didn't say, "Hi, Howard, how are you? Welcome to the account. Welcome to Montgomery." She said, "Who's your allegiance to, son?" And I said, "Whatever, whichever team you want." So I quickly learned War Eagles.
And most of my family, growing up in North Alabama, everybody up there is Bama fans, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of my family are Bama fans. So we give each other some grief.
Oh, but what I love about is the rivalry. So I love the fact that you just took a kind of a liking and it's just as somebody once said in Alabama, wild hair to just fish and wildlife. And so when you decided to kind of pursue this profession in college, and then you started to work for the Fish and Wildlife Service, did they tell you you're going to go to one flyaway, then you're going to go to next, or was there an opening and you said, "Yeah, I want to check out this area of the country"?
That's exactly how it works. So I came out here sight unseen. I got a good friend of mine, so I'm also an expert in waterfowl wing identification. So I'm a checker in the wing bee, which is a harvest survey that is in every flyaway that hunters are selected to send in a one wing or goose tail slash wingtips from every bird that they harvest. And so there's a group of people that go through these testing regimes and become experts in order to process that. Anyway, a little backstory there. So I had
Okay.
a good friend of mine that was a checker in the Pacific Flyway, Norm Secchi. He used to be the waterfowl project leader for the state of Nevada back in the day. And so I called him and I'm like, hey, there's this job opened up in Pahranagat. And I was like, what's it like? Because he's like, yeah, I used to fly the waterfowl surveys down there. I think you'll like it. So that's all I needed. I just packed me and my dog up and we headed west
All
for,
right. Now,
for 3 days.
okay. Oh yeah, I when I moved from Chicago to Las Vegas, I took a little longer. I took the scenic route to the south. When you moved out here, are you living on the refuge?
I'm required to live on the refuge. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. A question I want to kind of circle back to
Mhm.
the bird feathers. Tell us more about that. What's it for, and how are you using that information?
So it's the Fish and Wildlife Service along with the state flyways. So the flyways are basically like it's a administrative unit. It's a group of states and the Fish and Wildlife Service that have a common goal, which is basically north-south migrations for the most part, or for all of them. So I'm my home flyway. I'm a Mississippi flyway, and I help out when I need to in the other different flyways. But anyway, that harvest survey it's a two-pronged survey. So one group of hunters will get like a daily diary, and they record every day they go out, how many birds they harvest, how many birds they lost, ducks, coots, geese. And then the other aspect of that is this harvest survey. So again, if a hunter's selected for that and agree to do it, it's also a agreeable thing. So they can send you a request, and you can deny it. But most people enjoy doing it and then getting the report at the end of the year.
Sure.
But that information, so they harvest a bird, they cut a wing off if it's a duck or a brant, and then if it's a goose, you pull the tail feathers out and then cut the primaries. It's just the part of the feather, just the tips of them off, so we can gauge if it's a juvenile or adult. They send that in. from that information, it's almost like a driver's license. A wing to a duck is a driver's license. So we can tell what species it is, the gender, and the age. And that information is then processed through the flyaway, and each state has access. And so the hunter has to record what state, county, and city they're in. And that information is processed into a database. And then that way, states and the flyaways can pull that data out and then see what their harvests are. And the flyaway the tech session can also see what their harvests are in the flyaway. So you can use that information to determine harvest strategies. There's also several professors that's taken advantage of these wing parts or the waterfowl parts in order to do like genetic work. So they'll send their grad students up and pull as we're processing wings. You get, say, mallards, for example. You may get, say, 15,000 mallard wings that come into a flyway. That's a huge sample size that they can pull that data from, and they can pull isotopes, heavy metal isotope. They can do all this work from these processes, but it originally set up for just determining harvest strategies and those kind of things.
Okay. Now, when you say the word harvest, I think of harvest as in I'm a hunter. I go out. I'm a hunter for birds. And on our podcast, we've had a couple guests who have been bird hunters.
Mm-hmm.
Is the harvest strategy to gauge maybe we want to limit the amount of hunting, or maybe we're losing species of birds? Tell me more about that.
Yep. So harvest strategies, historically, we've done this adaptive harvest management. And we're using waterfowl. Dove has kind of went to that whole scenario. So there's a break. You got migratory birds, and then you got non-migratory birds. So like quail, chukar, turkeys, the gallinaceous birds are non-migratory. So states pretty much do their own thing for those species that are not migratory. When it goes into the migratory aspect of it, that's when the flyaway councils come in, the Fish and Wildlife Service comes in, and the Fish and Wildlife Service develops this harvest package, or the season date package, and those kind of things. So harvest strategies are exactly that. We kind of keep tabs on the population to make sure those populations are doing well. And like I said in the past, that the harvest strategies have been this adaptive management approach, which have looked at May ponds and breeding pair numbers. And so it's more in depth now. I'm not up on the new harvest strategy. They put a human dimension aspect into it now, and they've got these different metrics that are in play. And these metrics, after everything is calculated out, that's how they set the seasons, which you have three possible seasons. You got liberal, moderate, or restrictive. And then within those season packages, there's bag limits for these different species. So some species you can only kill 2 or 1, depending on what flyway they're in. Some species are closed, protected. And for something like a sandhill crane, for example, those harvest strategies and harvest is actually a driver for that population, because they're a long-lived species. They're not a really high production species. Like a sandhill crane is 9 years old before they actually really start producing. So you can actually over-harvest that if you're not monitoring that population harvest and recruitment of it. So there's a lot that goes in, a lot of biology that goes into a lot of science that goes into setting these season dates and bag limits and monitoring.
Okay. So I have a question.
Sure.
I'm a city boy, grew up in urban setting, Detroit suburbs, half my life, lived in Chicago and, Alabama for a year, and now Vegas. And I've heard of the Fish and Wildlife Service. I now, since I've been out here, have heard about the National Wildlife Refuges, and we are going to talk about that in a second. Does somebody like me, who's this urban guy, how aware are we, perhaps on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is like you guys folks are on top of everything that we're doing, where 1 is, trust me, you don't think about the Fish and Wildlife Service. Where's the urban person like I am on this scale? Because this whole outdoor adventure that we're working with in the podcast has opened my eyes to a lot of things throughout the U.S. But the average person, maybe they just like hear more about the TikTok video and who's playing at the local pub. What's your feeling on that? How aware are we?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, there's some folks that are city folks that are avid outdoors people that are fairly aware, and then there's some that don't even know what a national wildlife refuge is. So, I mean, I guess it's what group you're actually referring to. If you want to take, like, say, Las Vegas as a whole, or are we talking these different groups of people? So, yeah, I mean, I guess Las Vegas as a whole, I would say the outdoors type community is probably a lower population of that whole group
Okay.
from what I can see. So,
Okay.
um, well, even with our avid outdoorsmen, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that they really don't know about. I
Okay.
know they're interested in it, but they've got their own lives to live, so
Right.
it's really hard to get really just involved in something if you're not doing it daily and those kind of things. So I know like
Okay.
a lot of hunters are really involved, and they love talk about it and all that, but they may not know a lot that's going on the backstory. But
And I think that's important. And I attended a conference up in Wisconsin, Wisconsin Outdoor Communicators Association, and a lot of the conversation during that day and a half's meeting was the hunts, whether it's the deers or the wolves or how many brook trout can you catch and things like that. But and I was, as I was listening, I was thinking, unless they're actually doing it, I wonder how much or awareness they had into the other aspects of what, like, the organization, these Department of Natural Resources are doing. But I think you work for the government, and I would imagine, I mean, like everything else, there's a limited budget, and you have to choose where your budget dollars are going. And by the way,
absolutely.
we're not going to go down that path, Rob. Trust me. But I imagine communicating to the public about what your mission and what you do is incredibly important.
So that's one thing that I do preach. So and so if you look at NGOs or non-government agency organizations versus state agencies versus government agencies, we all have this common goal, but there's different focuses. So that's one of the things I'm trying to educate folks around here, especially my outdoor community, is the difference between, say, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Nevada Department of Wildlife or BLM or National Park Service. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is a wildlife first agency. Our main focus and goal is to provide wildlife habitat. Now we have like our big six. That's the outdoor recreational component. These big six, these six like hunting, fishing, outdoor education, outdoor photography, environmental interpretation, and so forth. Those are the things that we're focused on and we're wanting to pull in from our visitor services side. But the ultimate overarching goal is wildlife habitat. So if wildlife habitat is being affected by any one of the big six, like hunting, fishing, wildlife photography, and all that, then the wildlife habitat and wildlife management trumps those things. So what I tell everybody, just in layman terms, like, look, I'm an avid hunter. I'm an avid outdoors person. I like to bird. I like to go hunt. I like to be outdoors, like to hike. But for me, as a conservationist and while a manager of a refuge, the wildlife and the wildlife habitat is priority. Everything else is gravy. So if something starts impacting that main goal, then I have to look at these other things.
Okay.
So like for example, Park Service or BLM is a multi-use agency. They don't go wildlife first. So that's the big difference and between the different agencies. And you have the WMAs or wildlife management areas that Endow run, they're hunter focused. And we allow hunting on Pahranagat too. But if that hunting or fishing for that matter, or hiking or birding or anything starts impacting these different areas, then we'll have to readdress those things.
Okay. Okay. You know, let's talk about, as we kind of move over into, Pahranagat, because I really want you to share more about what you're doing within this refuge. The you talked about the harvesting and the survey.
Mhm.
Is that is that a part of the what you had back in Christmas time, the Christmas bird count is, how does that fit into the scheme of what you're doing?
So the Christmas bird count is the longest bird survey that has been going on. And it is not a harvest driven or anything. This is a separate, just all bird survey. The Christmas bird survey it's basically like a citizen science type survey. So what that is if you're a birder, or if you're wanting to get into birding, or if you thought about getting into birding, or you just want to go bird out with a bunch of bird nerds, and you can volunteer and get into these different groups and go do these counts. So you can have like this private citizens that have what they call a circle, which there's a zone or circle, a survey circle that you're assigned to. So they would say like, Howard, you get Western Las Vegas, this 15-mile radius around Western Las Vegas. So then you and your buddies go out and you bird, and you compile this data on this website and you send it in. So this is going all over the country. So from anywhere, US, Canada, anywhere that these things are going on, these citizen science people are out doing things on the field. And you go out and take these surveys, and you get into the Christmas bird count area, and or bird count area. You get into the Christmas bird count webpage, and then you upload this information, and then you get it provided for anybody. You can look online, go to the Christmas bird count webpage, see where these different circles are. You can actually sign up for participating in these bird surveys from that, or getting your local Audubon Society. So like Red Rock Audubon Society, a great group of people. They're very active. We do a lot with that group. They've got some great members and volunteers.
So you did the bird count. How now, what part of the season does it start and when does it end?
So you start, it's around Christmas. Okay. So you can start in around, so ours was like the 19th. It's usually like around that 19th area of December, and it runs until that last part of December, early January. And that's typically the time frame, because you want to try to do it during that, for everybody's going out at the same time, so you can get the snippet.
Gotcha.
In time. So if I'm doing a Christmas bird count like in that week of the 19th, somebody in Maine is doing one during that same time. Somebody in North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, California, and they're all over the country. Canada, they're doing it all at the same time, so we can get a good idea of what the nation's or North American birds are looking like as far as the surveys goes.
Okay. So within your area, within the Pahranagat and Moapa Valley National Wildlife Refuge area, what are you seeing from these bird counts? Has there been some shifting, some changing in the birds that you're seeing? Are they just not visiting anymore? Are they nesting different places? What are you seeing based on that information?
So this is year 2 of a pretty heavy drought that we've been in here down, and we've got a long-term drought going. So we started the lower Pahranagat Valley Christmas bird count circle in 2016. So there's 2 metrics that I like looking at, is total number of birds and then the number of species. And you can actually get on the Christmas bird count webpage and pull like mine data. You can look at states. If you pull the state up, it has all the different circles that are out there that you can look at if you're interested. The report actually breaks it down into species, how much time people spent. But anyway, this past year was one of our 3rd lowest, I believe it was. The lowest count we ever had was in 2018, and it was completely froze here. It was cold, not a lot of birds. So there are certain species that we have on the refuge that pretty much drive how, if you look at our total bird numbers, like, for example, in 2019, we had 36,000 birds, at almost 37,000. And then this year we only had 8,800.
Oh boy.
But yeah, so there's certain species like American coot that drive that number up, because when 2019, when we had that 36,000 birds, we had a huge flock of coots. This year, our coot numbers have not been that great. I don't know if it's probably drought driven. I mean, a lot of our birds that are coming here are wetland oriented or wetland dependent birds. They do get quite a few neotropical migrants, but I mean, our lowest number, like I said, was in 18, and that was because it was cold. But we had a really high species diversity. So we only had, say, 5,700 birds, but we had 78 different species. This year we had 73 species. So if you look at our species diversity is looking fairly flat. I mean, we haven't really seen a real decrease in species diversity. There's some species like mountain bluebird, for example. This year was the first year I did not see mountain bluebirds on our Christmas bird count. They did show up finally, but they're typically here in good numbers during that week of December the 19th ish.
Okay.
Every year it kind of falls. I try to keep it on a Sunday. So whatever that rolling date is, but it's always that week of that Sunday. And so that was kind of intriguing to me. And it was probably 2 weeks later that they actually showed up.
Could that be driven by just the climate and when they decide to, okay, gonna make my migration? I mean, why would they be late like that?
Could be the warmness this year. It's kind of warm. So the habitats that they were frequenting may have not been closed to them. So they were still taking advantage of those habitats. Could be body condition. So, like, for example, we had a delay in some migration in some species, and we had some weird migrations in some species this year as far as waterfowl.
Okay.
So when we were looking at the delayed migrations and then the molt migrations, which a lot of waterfowl, they go flightless and when they finally molt, they just do a complete wing molt. They don't do a staggered wing molt that keeps them flying.
Sure.
And that's usually in that June, July time frame. We were seeing birds showing up in September, almost early October, that had yet molt. And that's a body condition. So they just couldn't have enough, their body, the birds know that they don't have enough nutrients and environmental foods to be able to replenish their body or drive that molt. So they just moved to a new area they postpone that molt, try to find better conditions to do the molt in.
Okay.
So that was probably drought driven, a lack of habitat. So it's kind of depending on what species. As far as the mountain bluebirds, I don't really know. I don't know if it's climate change or what.
Okay.
So if it is drought driven, I mean, I know a lot of people say that the droughts now is probably a result of climate change. So you could probably say climate change, but to really nail it down to say this is particular, it was the drought. Like, I can probably pretty much guess that with the waterfowl that we were seeing, that was drought driven or lack of habitat.
Sure.
So, but it varies species to species.
Okay. So let's talk about Pahranagat and Moapa Valley refuges.
Sure.
How big an area is this, and what's unique about this area? Because I literally let all my friends know that come to Vegas and they go to the Strip. I say, well, you got to get off the Strip because there's some wonderful places, and I just love Pahranagat. I mean, I think it's wonderful. And tell us about that, and what's your experience as the manager?
So Pahranagat is actually connected to desert on the desert's northwest corner. And so desert's like 1.5 million acres. And then so the Pahranagat, we actually connect into desert on that side. But Pahranagat is very special in the fact that so I have to give another backstory. So each refuge is actually purchased for a specific purpose. So that purpose drives management and our management focus. So Pahranagat's a migratory bird refuge with special focus or special emphasis in waterfowl. So we are that oasis in the desert. That makes us special. Moapa is the same way. We have warm springs, but Moapa was purchased for an endangered species, the Moapa dace. It's actually the first refuge ever purchased for an endangered species in the nation.
Okay.
But the Moapa dace only occurs in like that little 20-mile radius around the Upper Muddy River. It's a minnow that's actually adapted, the only minnow that's actually ever adapted to a warm springs environment. So the water comes out of the ground right there about 96 degrees, and that minnow is adapted to living in that only section of anywhere in the world is that place. So those focuses drive our management. But those are the things that like Ash Meadows, for example, has the most endangered species, I think, of any refuge in the lower 48. So Ash, Desert, Moapa, Pahranagat are part of the whole desert complex. And it's just amazing the diversity of what these refuges have in Southern Nevada. So every refuge, like Desert's, everybody's pretty much familiar with that. It's a bighorn sheep desert range refuge. So you go from that aspect to up to elevations almost to 10,000 feet to Pahranagat, where we're a wetland area in the middle of the desert. So and our main focus is waterfowl, so and
Sure.
birds.
Okay.
So it's awesome how diverse this area is, especially when you get on the something where it has water like Pahranagat, and then that you really see things come to life here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just don't even know it exists. The folks coming into Las Vegas, unless you're specifically an outdoor adventure enthusiast, a lot of people
Right.
have no idea, which in some ways it makes the commute up there easy. What's a day in the life of a refuge manager?
Oh my gosh. So, well, this one is actually a little more fast paced, crazier lifestyle because of the lack of personnel we have on the refuges. All the refuges in the complex are experiencing this. We're short staffed. We have myself. I have a vacant assistant manager position that usually helps out at Moapa, and I have a wage grade. And then we have a contractor visitor services specialist. And then I have a contractor that's a biotech. And we're trying to recruit for a biotech to help with some of the field work that's going on. So typically refuge managers, it's more of an administrative kind of position, but there is no biologist here. There's a lack of help to work out in the field. So you're an administrator, you're a biologist, you're an equipment operator, you're helping fix water lines one day. So it's all over the place here. So I think that's what makes this area exciting. I mean, I love my job. I love doing what I'm doing. I've always done, even no matter where I've been, I've always loved my jobs and all that. But just having just so many things that you're got your hands into here makes it more even special. I mean, you're not keyholed into doing something same thing every day. You're not in the office. You're in the office every day, but you may have to leave and go do things, out in the field. So that's what
Sure.
makes this position exciting.
I can
So I
imagine.
guess to answer your question, there's really no good answer to your question. It depends on
That-
the day. It depends on what breaks. What's
That's
the next thing
okay.
that
And hey,
breaks?
look, it takes you away from having to answer that phone and those lights blinking. So when I was out there with my friends last, we were hoping to see the Eagles, and I called her Ranger Emily. Is she a ranger?
She's a visitor services specialist, but yes, they call them refuge rangers.
Okay, so good. Ranger Emily, but she was wonderful and had a nice picture, shared it up on the Facebook group, and we're hoping to get back out there this weekend. So I just love getting out there, getting some exercise, walking, get my camera with me because I'm more of a photography guy.
Right.
But I just think, it's again, Pahranagat is just wonderful. And I need to go check out some of the other wildlife refuges as well. As you look back in your career, Rob, any insights anything you'd tell your younger self?
Ooh, yeah. Don't be scared to venture around to places you've never been. I think I finally got comfortable with coming out here sight unseen. I wish I'd have done a little bit more of that when I was younger. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I wish I'd have done a lot more. Like I have always wanted to go to Alaska, and so if it'd probably been a lot easier if I was younger than I am now. But I still want to go do that trip. But yeah, don't
Yeah,
be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to venture out, which I've never really been. I mean, if you get into wildlife degree, and if anybody's listening that are thinking about getting into wildlife, don't keyhole yourself. Don't
right.
don't say I got to live like at home, because you probably ain't gonna live close to your home. I mean, a long way from where I grew up. So don't do that. Keep your options open and keep your passion going. I mean, that's what keeps my passion going, is seeing and doing new things. So
Good, good. I think it's wonderful. And again, this podcast has provided me insights into people's work and passions, in this outdoor space. And when I was at the film festival, there was a desert film festival down in Red Rock, Spring Mountain State Park there, just right next to Red Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I had met somebody before the film festival. They had the tables where all the local nonprofits, agencies were there. And that's where I met somebody from your team was there. And it was like, yeah, I think it was Emily. Or maybe I reached out. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I just think as I start to visit these areas, it's really kind of cool to have somebody like yourself, like Aaron McDermott, executive director at Red Rock, just kind of talking about what they do and why the work that they're doing in the place where they're doing it is so special. And so like having you on the show to me is special because I've been there. In fact, going to go back again tomorrow and it's just, if you come to Las Vegas, you got to go see Pahranagat. I mean, it's special. And so appreciate you sharing this with us today.
Yeah, there's so many beautiful places. From all the way from the northeast to the southeast, all the way across the country. There's just so much to see. So, you just got to get out and see it.
There you go. Listen, Rob, before we head out today, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and Pahranagat, where are the best places for them to go?
So we got the Facebook page, and then we got the web page. The web page is being redone. We got a new platform that they're moving into. So if the web page is not working yet, it will be soon.
Okay.
So those are the best things you can do. Look up the refuge. So if you go to the Fish and Wildlife Service, no matter where you're at, you can go to National Wildlife Refuges, and it pulls up a map. And you can go to the state, like if you plan on traveling or people that are thinking about coming here, pull up that map and look at the wildlife refuges that are out there. 500 something wildlife refuges across the country. So that way you can pick your refuges and then go exploring.
Very good. Well, I love that.
Make sure you look at the rules and regs. So every refuge will have their rules and regs there. So make sure you look at your rules and regs before you go.
I get you there. So Rob, thank you, for joining us today on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. And it's just been wonderful to kind of learn more about you, your work, and sharing about your passion for and work at Pahranagat and Moapa Valley National Wildlife Refuges.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
All right. Listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
Sure.
Very good. All right, folks, if you haven't figured it out, I was kind of geeking out today listening to what Rob was sharing and learning more about him and his work, and especially Pahranagat. I mean, if those who are connected with me on social sites, Facebook, Instagram, etc., know that I love this area. I mean, I've been up there doing some dark sky photography. We were up there recently trying to see if we could see our nesting pair of eagles. They decided not to show up. We did see a blue, I believe it was Rob, what was that? The blue crane?
Blue heron?
Blue heron. That's it. Blue heron. And a couple geese in the water. I did get one little shot of a blue bird. I might have to ask Rob what that bird was, but what a special area. So if you're going to come to Las Vegas, 90 minutes north, you're in this wonderful, wonderful oasis right in the middle of the desert. And also today we learned about the Fish and Wildlife, agency, and we learned about the birding, Christmas bird count. We learned about the harvest survey. So many things are going on behind the scenes. So when we go out to the parks, the local, the state, the national parks, the wildlife refuges, there's so many things going on behind the scenes. So if you have any interest in this, get involved. Go out to the Fish and Wildlife Service, go out to the parks, ask how you can volunteer and get involved. And not only are you getting some exercise, you're getting out to nature, but you are also walking away from the technology per se, because you're just enjoying yourselves by yourself, with your friends and your family. And I couldn't imagine being in Las Vegas without places like Pahranagat, especially during COVID, because having a car and getting out, even by myself, out to a place like this was special, and and I didn't have to stay in my apartment all the time. So, folks, we hope you enjoyed today's episode on the Outdoor Adventure Series. And again, we appreciate Rob taking time out of his busy day. I'm sure his phone is still lit up because people are trying to get to him. So if you like this episode, do let us know. We're on the outdooradventureseries.com. We also have our page on Facebook, the Outdoor Adventure Series. And we're also on LinkedIn, though we are still under the Success Insight podcast banner, but we're going to continue to post our Outdoor Adventure Series episodes there. We are on all of the major podcasting platforms: Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, and really just numerous ways to listen to this episode and enjoy it and listen to our other Outdoor Adventure Series episodes. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.